Yo guys, today we're gonna rank the trials of Danganronpa Another One. I recently played through this game, and I have a lot to say about the 6 trials. We're gonna start from what I feel is the worst one, and make our way up to the best. I should also say that I spoiled myself on all the victims and killers, because I read a summary of spoilers to catch myself up on the plot of SDRA 2 when I was watching that a few years back. However, I do not know the nitty-gritty details, such as how the crimes were committed, so keep this perspective in mind when you watch the video. Also, do note that I factor in the investigations as well, so I'm treating these as cases rather than trials. I just put trials in the title because I thought more people would click on it, and well, without further ado, let's get on to the rankings. In number 6, we have third case syndrome striking once again. This case is strange in the fact that I think it's more entertaining than the next 2 trials on the list, but I think it's far more broken. The initial discoveries are fun. We see Kinji bleeding, then we discover Rei in a bloody locker, the 2 dead bodies, and also Kinjo who is knocked out cold. It is a very interesting segment as so many crazy things are happening back to back, and then we get to the investigation and the clues are interesting. But there were signs that the case wasn't going to be as good, and the trial confirms that. Yuiharu's initial plan was actually fine. It's very simple. Just stab Inori in the art room and leave. But Yamaguchi walks in, so now he has to kill Yamaguchi. He also tries to kill Inori because there's a chance Inori knew Yuiharu was the one who made her unconscious. Okay, this is reasonable. But for some reason, instead of following his initial plan, where he can just stab Inori after killing Yamaguchi, this man decides to improvise by setting up this electrocution trap for Inori. Why? Just take another weapon from the art room and stab Inori as well. This whole electrocution trap just comes out of nowhere and seems too convoluted for an improvised plan. It's what leads to Yuiharu being the obvious suspect, as the phone points to him even if it isn't decisive evidence. But there are more crazy parts to the plan than just this. Somehow, Kinji is just able to track Rei and Tsurugi without getting caught. I have no idea what the logic behind this is, but when Rei went to the art room, Yuiharu was at the right location to catch her, and he was able to do so without her seeing him. Then when Tsurugi went to the library, he was at the right location to catch Tsurugi without getting caught, and just think about how contrived that is. Not only was he at the right location to catch 2 different people, he caught them while risking the fact that he could be seen. And just think about how many times Yuiharu could have gotten caught with this plan. Once he removes the weapon from Kakeru's body, he'd spill a lot of blood on his clothes, which means he would have to wash those, and he also has to spend time moving this heavy dude down a floor. It's not a well thought out plan, and the risk to reward is pretty bad, as the crime is easy to solve. I will say the non-stop debates are fun, and I think aspects of the ending are done well. Even though I like to poke fun at Yuiharu, he does have some interesting moments. When his calm persona breaks, he looks down on Yuki for being talentless. The irony of that is pretty great once you get to the end of the game, but I find that aspect of Yuiharu's character to be more interesting, and I like how he calls out Tsurugi on his hypocrisy of saving the majority. Monokuma shutting down at the start and the end of the trial were interesting plot points, and I loved going into that secret passage only for Monokuma to troll us hard and kick us out. Again, it's a fun enough trial to play, but when you take ideas from DR1 Case 3, it's more likely than not that things will go very wrong. In the number 5 spot, we have Case 1. Case 1 feels more like a test. It feels like Lunu just wanted to see if he could construct a basic entry trial, and I think that's fine, especially when you consider that he has made so much progress by making 2 entire fan games. However, as a result of being the very first trial, it is quite bland. It borrows a lot from DR1 Case 1, and while the trick with the rubber ball is kinda cool, what really drags this trial down are the characters. I feel like one of the biggest strengths in Danganronpa is how the characters are used within the trial, but most of them feel very underused. Take the victim Kyoka for example. She says one small speech about how everyone should stay happy, and then she dies. There really wasn't much to her character. Then you got the killer Mitch. He can be condescending and makes unpleasant advances. He also cares a lot about his soccer team, but we don't feel the impact of that motive, as he just tells us that's the case, and the game doesn't really show it. Again, overall, a fairly bland character. Mitch's plan also isn't that good. You could just leave the body in the laundry room and be done with it. The extra steps don't really do a lot. Now of course, even if he left the body in the laundry room, he would get caught because of his notepad, but that's a mistake on his part that would catch him no matter how complicated the crime is. Tsurugi's psycho reveal is also not that impactful. His crazy sprite comes out so fast compared to his otherwise calm demeanor. I think a better build up to that change would have made this better. Think of something like Nagito's crazy reveal in DR2 Trial 1, where we slowly figure out that Nagito is crazy before we get to his insane laughing scene. However, I will say he was one of the characters I found the most interesting. I wanted to learn more about his perspective of how all killers should die, and I was looking forward to where that went in the later chapters. Rei was the other character I found to be interesting in this trial. She's a bit of a Byakuya copy, but I did find her interesting at moments, such as when she calls out Mitch for abandoning his friends, and when she can't help but laugh at Tsurugi for how much of a lunatic he is. She's able to bring out different sides to the other characters by making them mad, and overall changes the group dynamic, so I feel like she is a highlight of the trial. Now in at number 4, we got Trial 4. Trial 4 is decent, although the clues for the case are interesting, the overall mystery isn't. For example, when I saw the blood trail throughout the room, I thought we would use it as some form of deduction to figure out Haruhiko's exact movements, but that's not something we delve into all that much. Mikako's testimony of spying through the people seems like it could lead to some cool form of deduction, but it's all fairly straightforward. I do like Terio's involvement in the trial. His arc of moving past his bad actions in the case is really good to see, and I think Satsuki revealing herself at the start of the trial is a cool idea. I like the story with Haru and how Haru learned about the clue of him and Satsuki in the past. I also like the twist on Haru's motive, where he doesn't want everyone to survive, rather he wanted Satsuki to survive. However, Satsuki didn't respect that wish, and I found that to be a unique and interesting situation. Although I'm not the biggest fan of this chapter's motive being a kill or die type of situation, I think it was interesting in the fact that the group had to ration out the food. That was interesting because it led to more conflicts with some people hoarding the food. This is what ultimately leads to Terio's fight with Haru, and that was a good setup for the entire trial. However, I think the trial runs a bit too long. Some characters like Rei and Tsurugi feel dumbed down severely just to pad out the trial. An hour and 30 minutes is more than enough to get through the entire case, especially when the culprit straight up confesses to the crime at the very beginning, but it feels like the trial goes on for about twice as long. The ending of the case is very cool with the introduction of Kisaragi, and that's about all I have to say for Case 4. In the number 3 spot, we got Case 6. Case 6 is good for some of its unique ideas. It has a very fun investigation. I like how Kinjo confronts Yuki about his wild change in personality. It's very clear that Yuki is not himself, which is a good setup for the trial. I also like a lot of the clues. Reading through Kisaragi's diary entries, the hints in the electrical room, the entirety of the processing room, and the twists related to the layout of the building were all fun to discover. I like learning about the broader picture, and the twist that this is a rehearsal for the 78th class's killing game. Funnily enough, my favorite part is what happens outside of the courtroom. I love seeing Yuki get his memories back and recalling how the students escaped and how the different students interacted when they knew each other a lot more. There were many interesting scenes, such as Kisaragi catching on to Akane and Yuki, Mikako and Kisaragi's dynamic with their true personalities, and seeing Yuki just stand there while all his classmates are fighting for their lives. For me, the truck scene is especially one of the most enjoyable scenes. We get to see how all the classmates react to the world crumbling, and it's awesome to see these characters develop just a bit more. Additionally, there are cool ideas such as the bad or good ending. I did find it interesting how the bad ending is the one that seems optimistic, while the true ending is the one filled with malice. The characters are also used well. Teruya stands out as the idiot of the group as he's surrounded by a lot of smart people, thus he has a lot more funny lines. Yuki continues to look more suspicious than ever as he knows more than his classmates and has frequent headaches, which is interesting to see. I also like the angle on Mikako's character. She was too hopeful. She was too naive. Her trust in Yuki and Akane is what led to this disaster within the Kisaragi building. And I think the most interesting character of all is Akane. Despite being on the bad side, she cared a lot for her classmates and turned on the person who saved her from a horrific childhood. She follows Utsuro no matter what, but we can see how that hurts her, and it almost seemed like she was forced to do so, as Utsuro did threaten to kill her. But that doesn't mean she's innocent. There are times where she showed happiness for Utsuro's plan succeeding, so Akane is a very interesting character indeed. If we were just going based off entertainment, I think Case 6 could rival the final two cases on the list. However, I have huge problems with some of its plot points. First, we got the side effects for Mikako and Kisaragi. I always believed that Mikako was being controlled by Monokuma when she felt pain, but apparently this is a side effect from the memory preservation device. So apparently when Mikako starts speaking, she experiences severe pain. If this is the case, why didn't Mikako just communicate through writing? The students literally got a notebook at the start of the game. Just write things down to communicate when necessary. Yuki Maeda also not knowing his elementary school or mom's name is weird because how has he never thought about those things? I can't even begin to imagine how that works. And finally there's Utsuro's heavenly luck. Look, I've never liked how luck was used in Danganronpa. It's essentially a tool to do whatever you want to do, and Utsuro is that concept taken to an extreme. Basically, if Utsuro wants something to happen, it will happen. This one character can control so much of the plot, and I just don't like that at all. For one, it creates so much confusion. For example, take Utsuro's backstory. His fortune helped his parents, but after a while his parents became greedy and started taking advantage of him. This made him really sad, and it was a huge event in his life that led him to wander around the streets. However, if Utsuro has the ability to will things into existence, why don't his parents lose their greed if he wishes for them to not be that way? Like, there's so many loopholes with this heavenly luck power. He could get his parents whatever they wanted, but now he can't get his parents to treat him properly. There are also many questions about how his luck works in the killing game. So Tsurugi lived because when Utsuro was Yuki, he really wanted Tsurugi to stay alive. So why does this not work with the other characters? Why didn't he save Kanata? Why didn't he save Yamaguchi? Is it because Utsuro's will overtook Yuki's wishes at the time? Like, this is so complicated. Can Utsuro just plan the entire course of the killing game? It really is messy in a lot of ways. Utsuro's heavenly luck can also be used to explain any contrivances away, which is not good because it feels cheap. You can literally explain anything by just saying Utsuro willed it to happen. Why did Yuki not realize he didn't know the name of his mother? Well, Utsuro just made that happen that way because he's essentially God. Utsuro also takes away from the actions of other characters. Let's look at what I said earlier about Mikako's trust in Yuki and Akane leading to the demise of the 79th class. Well, if Utsuro had his heavenly luck, does it really matter? Does it matter if Mikako told Kisaragi to stop pursuing Utsuro if Utsuro can just will the killing game into existence? These are some of the reasons why I don't like heavenly luck, and more specifically don't like Utsuro, which is a huge reason why I don't have case 6 within my top 2. Alright, now these final 2 spots were really difficult to pick because I really like both of these cases. Really, either one of these could take the number 1 spot, and I'd basically consider them tied for that spot, and I'd have to dig deeper into the cases to see which one I like more. Maybe give it a second playthrough or watch through to really solidify my opinions, but for now, I'm reluctantly putting Trial 2 in the number 2 spot. Case 2 stands out from the rest because it's original. This is the only case in the game which feels like its own. It feels detached from whatever we saw in Trigger Happy Havoc. And that's why I really wanted to put this at the number 1 spot, but I genuinely felt like I enjoyed one case just a bit more than this. And originality is not the only reason why this case is so high on the list. Because if the case is original but bad, it would go straight to the bottom. However, this case delivers on all fronts. The trial does a lot of cool things. I like how the game shows that testimonies aren't solid proof. Yes, someone can testify, but how can we confirm if what they're saying is true? We can't just take their word for it, and it's fun seeing the characters get past that hurdle. There are also some cool reveals like Yuki's motive. Yuki knowing the mastermind is awesome to learn about, and it has a lot of impact on how the others see him. I also find Kazuna's character to be really interesting in this incident. I truly do think she felt alone and liked how everyone helped her. I mean, the only way her crying could be fake was if she knew Yuki and Akane were nearby and was trying to convince them that she was sad. I feel like that's likely not the case and Kazuna just had a strong desire to escape, but I'll talk more about that in the character rankings video. It's also interesting that Mikako's reasoning for being late wasn't explained. That's a question that we thought would be answered in the post-trial, but instead it leaves some of the intrigue for chapter 3. Another great post-trial moment is where Monokuma meets this person who's confined. It's another interesting plot thread to end the chapter on. But we also have to talk about the other half of the case, which is the mystery. I really love the investigation. All the clues are super fun to explore. I love looking at things like the bloodstains and the evidence that there are 3 people involved, such as the flashlights and the conflicting escape routes. There are some parts I didn't like. I think the wire trap could have been handled better, the assumption that the culprit set up the wire trap is too quick, and I think the decisive evidence is not really decisive. Like when playing the case, I had that question of how the wire hit the back of Hitano's leg instead of the front, but no one else seemed to bring that up until the very end of the case. After a while, I just thought it could have been possible that she did step over it and it just hit the back of the leg on accident, because it seems like something you'd question from the very beginning, and we really can't say it's decisive, because it is possible that she randomly took a step higher than the wire. Still, combined with all the other pieces of evidence, I think it is enough to say that Hitano is the blackened, and the reason why she puts the trap for herself makes sense, as she felt guilty. I also thought Kinja's reasoning for treating Akane as a killer was interesting. It is actually understandable because Akane was hiding the truth, which would have led to everyone's death. Seeing the conflict between Kinjo and the rest of the group was very fun and added to the enjoyment of the trial. The drama between Akane and Kinjo is definitely a highlight, especially with Akane going insane because of what she did. The logic also felt the most difficult with this trial. I really did have to think about a lot of the questions before giving my answers, so it was fun putting the case together. Overall, Trial 2 has it all. A great mystery, a lot of great character moments, and some great drama. And in the number 1 spot, we have Case 5. I still debate on whether Case 2 should take that number 1 spot, because it was so different, but when I reflect on which case I enjoyed the most while playing the game, I do think Case 5 is the winner. Let's start with the investigation because there are some really interesting clues. I like how the rec room operates and how you can go there using the ballroom. The case does a really good job of making you feel uneasy, as Mikako is too obvious of an answer. You also question so many things like why Kisaragi was killed at this point in the game, and why he had the number to the rec room in the notebook that is otherwise filled with empty pages. The actual mystery behind the murder remains unclear to an extent, and that made the entire case fun to put together. Going into the trial, I love how much you can learn through Mikako's expressions. You learn that she didn't even realize her bedroom door was open and her sleeping cloth was used. Rei's accusation against Yuki was also a great intermission cliffhanger. I really like the way that Yuki has a breakdown after being accused, but finds a way to move on from the accusation. The way the suspicion goes to Yuki and then back to Mikako was really cool, and I like a lot of the arguments because they essentially have to consider all the possibilities while not being able to definitively prove facts to be true. I like seeing the characters confused, as they're not even sure if Monokuma would do something like this, and it's just really gripping to see all these characters in a dilemma. This is especially true for Mikako, as she gets hurt if she speaks, but she has to speak if she wants to stay alive and not be executed. The gameplay is also above average. I like how there's no rhythm minigame, and I like the gameplay parts where you have a broken truth bullet and a rebuttal showdown where you barely have to try. It's a cool way to present parts of the trial. Case 5 in Trigger Happy Havoc was easily my favorite case in the game when I first played it, so I guess it makes sense why I like this case so much. However, because of this, the case does feel like a copy and loses some impact. Thankfully, the post-trial does put its own unique twist on things. I love how Rei wants to get the truth out of Mikako no matter what, and Mikako gives Rei the last hint about some events they were in. I'll admit that hint didn't end up being as interesting as I thought, but it was still really cool at the moment. I also like how with their final words, Mikako gives one last hope speech, and it's actually cool rather than being cheesy and hard to listen to. She goes out in such a cool way, and then we get a gruesome twist with her corpse being executed. But then, we get the power outage, which is another great twist, as Mikako's execution isn't complete. I also love Kinja's awakening, and seeing him change by getting his memories back was awesome. Adding on to this is a cool moment where Kinjo calls out Akane and triggers her true ultimate despair form. I really like how the game set up this Kinjo-Akane rivalry and twisted it in a way where Akane originally seemed like the good person, but then she ends up being the mastermind. And the best part of Case 5 is that it does all of this in a short time. Case 5 easily has the best pacing because although it is short, it's very eventful. While some of the other cases have some downtime, Case 5 just moves along at a quick pace where you're constantly interested in what's going on. And there we go. This is my ranking of the 6 cases in Danganronpa Another Despair Academy. Please comment your list down below because I've honestly never seen a list ranking the trials of this game, So I really don't know what the general consensus on these cases are. I'm interested in seeing how our lists are similar or how they differ, so yeah, please comment those down and stay tuned for some more DRA videos. Goodbye.